But of course, all our topics are interconnected in the theme of sustainability. But now we want to talk about a specific angle of that. We want to take a deep dive into the topic of virtual fashion, so virtualization in the fashion industry. And I'm very excited to have 4 panelists here with me today who I'd like to bring on stage now. I have Stacia Carr from Zalando. Please give a big round of applause and a big welcome as they join me on stage. I have Andreas Seidl from Human Solutions. Another big round of applause, please. Lena Blume from Browzwear. More applause. And last but not least, Kerry Murphy from the Fabricant. Please feel free to take the stage and grab a seat of your choice. You can go anywhere. So sorry we didn't have a chance to meet before off stage. I'm really looking forward to this conversation, also of course involving you in the conversation. Just a couple of points of outlining perhaps. We have the introduction of a whole new set of digital options in the fashion world. Digital sampling, 3D body scanning, and the idea of the digital twin, which has become popular in other industries and is perhaps also taking hold in the fashion industry. So with our distinguished guest here, I am looking forward of discussing what effect is this having, where are perhaps the advantages and the opportunities when it comes to sustainability and virtualization, where are we moving to technologically, where are technological advancements we're witnessing, but perhaps where are also some new challenges, especially when we pick up on the topic of the last panel, consumption habits and systemic change. So that's a little bit of an outline of what we'd like to be talking about. And to begin with, I would like to give each of you a little bit of an opportunity to talk about how virtualization is affecting your work. So maybe let's start with Zalando. Of course, we already had Zalando here on stage yesterday, and had a discussion there also around values and around sustainability and also social responsibility in many ways. So I'm excited to hear how virtualization is taking hold in your company.
Thank you so much. That's a great opening. We look at it as an opportunity to provide tremendous value to consumers. I lead the size and fit organization at Zalando, and for those of you that don't know, about 50% of Zalando's, we have an average about 50% return rate, and about 1/3 of those are for size-related reasons. Virtualization gives us an opportunity to really guide consumers through a purchase process where they can see how an item might fit a body like theirs before they have to click the buy button. And my team and I are really excited about not just changing the shopping experience, but also being able to reduce the need for returns, size-related returns, specifically by integrating virtualization into the customer journey.
There was in the air screen, so there's different screens sort of running through a loop with different air informations, if you haven't seen them here outside. And one of them actually contained a statistic on how many parcels are being sent through Germany every day, and return parcels, especially in with the CO2 emissions that causes. So that is a very concrete problem that you're trying to solve. I had the privilege of being at a presentation of one white label solution for body scanners quite recently, because I think that's a field where we're really seeing some technological advancement. Can you give us a little bit of insight into that?
Yes, this is, I think, one of the most exciting topics that my team and I have looked at in the last 24 months. The ability to give the consumer the opportunity, just with a mobile device, to share what was basically a given when tailors and anybody wearing clothing or somebody making their clothing at home were able to get, which was data on their body measurements. So if suddenly we can empower the consumer with a quick and easy way to communicate body measurements, everything changes. Not just the online shopping experience, but also how a platform like Zalando can empower brands by sharing data, eventually, obviously, with consumer consent, but to be able to say, hey, these are your customers, the people actually buying your product, and this is what their bodies look like.
I don't want to get too technical here. Maybe just one more question on that, because the data issue is a little, obviously something that's quite sensitive when we're talking about specific personal biodata, so your body measurements. And when the startup was presenting their solution, I thought, wow, this is one of those cases where personal digital identity that I can manage and share with stores as I see fit would be so much better than the brand or the company storing my data. Obviously, that's something that we're very much at the beginning at. Blockchain featured a little bit in discussions in the last couple of days. Is that something that's sort of in your field of vision?
Absolutely. So I think first and foremost, it's getting the technology to a point where the measurements are generated on device. So those images that we use to generate the measurements, they don't need to leave and go into a cloud, and then God only knows where they land, right? And then it's looking at the data. It's commodity data that the consumer should be able to control. And nobody knows how this is going to work, but I think the view we have is it needs to be for the benefit of the consumer first and foremost.
Absolutely. So let's move along, and we'll first gather all the different ways in which virtualization is affecting your parts of business, and then, of course, debate. Human Solutions provides software that works along the value chain. Can you let us into your business a little bit? What exactly do you provide companies with?
Yeah, our software supports the customers typically in the process of product development. So from the first idea, we offering a 3D design system where you go in, you have an avatar with the right sizes, and then you design on the 3D area. So not on a pattern, but the system is intelligent, and in the background, it maps all your design information to the patterns itself for construction, and then you can create a deck pack and give it on the next stage in the process. And then when the pattern designer comes in, that's the next stage. When they make the details, they can use the design approaches, and they can work furthermore, so they can finalize the product. So they can, at the end of the day, they can send it to the cutter and can produce it. So the goal we have is from you are on a 3D level in your design phase, but in the background you are working on 2D, because at the end of the day, you need the 2D information of your patterns because you want to produce it. And our goal is the whole process is fully integrated from the first idea to the production side.
This term, the digital twin, has become quite popular in a number of industries, both in production industries as well as in the health industry. Can you introduce us to the term perhaps a little bit and what it means from your perspective in the fashion industry?
Yeah, digital twin is the avatar of your population you want to create your product. It's not a question of an individual. What we are doing, or one company in our group, we are measuring people around the world. 3 months ago, we finalized the US survey with more than 17,000 people. We scanned, and the results are a statistic approach, a statistic data set to create 3D avatars. It's not a question of the individual. When you go in, you will never see Mrs. Smith or Mrs. Meyer. You see the size 48. And this right size gives you the chance to make the right fitting for your product, and then the result is that you have less return rates. This is a little bit the problem. Return rates came not while the user or the customer at the end of the day has the wrong body. No, it comes, the product is wrong, and you have to integrate the right size inside the design and the product phase. This is very important.
Does digital twin mean something else in any of your businesses? No? Okay, good. Just checking. Not a quiz. So maybe just to understand a bit better, the idea of 3D modeling or 2D modeling is not completely new, but where are sort of the qualitative changes that you're seeing in the last couple of years?
Yeah, so I think in the last 3 years we have a tremendous increase of the 3D technology. 2015, the first company started with that, Adidas or Hugo Boss in Germany. But in the last 3 years, we have a growth rate approximately 50 to 70% every year. Actually, each big brand started or is starting now with a 3D project. So what is the idea behind is to create speed. This is very important. It's not a question of money or whatever. It's speed theme. The main problem is that we are too slow in our development. When a company needs 9 months or 15 months to develop a product, it's too long. You're not able to decide what's the right color, the right style or so on in a market coming in 15 months. So you have to reduce it, and what we see in customers, they have done it. Today they are able to develop a product within or less than in 40 days. The high-speed companies are able to do that in 10 days, but you need to change everything inside the company. This is very important.
I'm not sure if the ladies from the last two panel would be too happy to hear that that's the main sort of aim is to speed things up. But maybe we'll talk about impacts and ecological impacts of what we're talking about here in the next round. Lena, Browzwear adds another component to virtualization in the fashion industry. You offer virtual sampling. Can you talk us through that a bit?
Well, we more or less do the same. So it's another company that we also create or help companies to work on their development process, and we actually call it agile and not faster, because for us it's all about working in a collaborative process and not in a silo one or streamlined. Because at the moment the problem really is that a lot of fashion companies, you create a sample and no one can do anything until the sample actually gets in, and then you can do your fitting and you can talk about colors and fits. And if you start with 3D and 3D sampling, you can change that complete process, and you can actually everyone can start to work by the time this design is put in 3D instead of putting it on paper. So this is why we're actually able to provide a process that is more agile in terms of we can create something that actually makes value to the customer instead of pushing styles through that we expect to be in fashion in 12 months. We can actually create something that has value to the customer.
Where do you see technological advancements that might make this whole field of 3D sampling even more exciting than it already is, as in like taking it to the next level? Are you already thinking about and experimenting with tactile topics, sensors, other experiences of how to experience design or fabric in a virtual way?
Well, we're actually not doing it at the moment because and this is unfortunately the truth, we still struggle with this change that we have with our customers and with the fashion industry, that we're actually trying to go in and promote this change, because the technology is far ahead from what we actually see in the companies at the moment.
Okay, right.
So it is possible, a lot is possible, and it sometimes would overwhelm the companies or fashion businesses if we'd go in and we can say you can do this and this and this, and you actually need to really start on creating this 3D process, because what we see at the moment is a lot of companies would like to do 3D, and what they do is they replace their current process with 2D and then replace it with 3D, and then they run into a lot of issues. So it's not really the vision, often unfortunately it's not there, which is we'd like
more little information to that. As in the last 2 years, we have done a very interesting retail project with Benetton and some German companies, where we brought the information, the 3D style of the products, the visualization inside the store. And there were some ideas like bring your own device. You go inside the store and the store knows you and helps you to find the right size, the right style. It supports you automatically what fits to another one, how is this change of colors or whatever, intelligent changing box. There are a lot of issues doing actually, and we think there's a lot of influence of this technology in the next stages of the working process of the fashion industry.
I want to loop you into this. I was fascinated when I first learned about the Fabricant and what you do. And I think it's really sort of trying to create completely new approaches and a little bit of new territory. virtual fashion. What does it mean for the Fabricant?
I think we're working on the exact same things as you're working on and what you guys are working on, but we're looking at it from a completely different perspective, which is basically asking the question of how can we make the whole fashion industry virtual or digital? How can we sell digital-only garments? And what is the value of a digital-only garment for the consumer? Because the functionality changes. Okay, it's not something that you wear in your physical life. It's not something that keeps you warm. So we basically need to create a new user case for it.
Before you tell us how it works, I'm just curious to find out, like, how did you come up with the idea? Was this a team meeting where you all got drunk and then you were like, we should just try this? Or where did this come from?
Let's say I worked in advertising for 10 years and I find advertising to be a very soulless industry with no purpose, and I was always looking for more purpose in my work. And basically this idea just came from making one animation test of clothing, which it completely failed, but that kind of sent me on a path to actually do research of what is happening in the clothing simulation or the clothing animation industry, only to see all the different possibilities that was coming from the fashion side, which brought me into the fashion industry to kickstart that discussion of what would it mean to actually do virtual visualization of fashion. Is there a business model? Can we be a profitable company while visualizing fashion in a virtual way? And basically, yeah, the answer is yes. There is a massive need for it, which allowed for a lot of different
It's not just an art project, it's a business case.
I say that we combine creativity, technology, and business models together. And as long as we look at it from excellence from those three different perspectives, that's when we actually start creating value from a digital fashion perspective. Because when you talk about that, you know, you need to reduce your returns. Basically, that's what it allows for. What is that experience? You talk about it from a very practical experience. Now, can it not be more engaging? Can it not be more fun and creative? Same thing. We're all talking about very practical solutions here, and they're all very valid. They're the business opportunities of the industry right now, but how are we going to actually make it something for the masses? It definitely has to become something more fun, and I feel like my background coming from film and visual effects, it has a lot about that narrative, that the creative exercise, because honestly what we're doing is not any different from you or you. We just do it in a different way, and we're trying to envision a fashion industry from a complete different perspective, again, which is that digital only solution. What are those experiences that we can create? How can we make the e-commerce experience something completely different from what it is right now?
Can you just very practically, quickly explain what digital fashion can I buy and where would I wear it? Would my Second Life avatar wear it?
Okay, so where we are, yeah, no, it does. So where we are right now, you can go to our website, you can download free digital clothing, right? Now, can you use it? Probably not if you don't have 3D software knowledge. So, because we started allowing people to download digital clothing for free, it allowed us to create a community, allowed us to create a discussion and understand what does the community want when it comes to digital fashion. And it came down to three different things. They want tutorials on knowing how to use these 3D files. Secondly, they want more content, let's say digital fashion narrative content. But the number one request was, how can I wear digital clothing? So that sent us on our actual path. So we created a prototype where you get to come in, create a digital avatar of yourself, and actually put on our new collection of clothing, and then you get an animated video that you can, right now you can put it on your social media, you can communicate to your friends, your family, look at me wearing digital clothing.
Stacia, is that kind of the next step of where you'd also see things going? Like, rather than just scanning and making sure I've got a correct body size, am I going to virtually try on the clothes, send them to my friends, see what works before I order it?
Absolutely. I think that's definitely, I think we'll be working together in the future. I think that's the missing link. I mean, people can't, unless we ship you a parcel, you can't try something on. So why wouldn't we continue with outfits and then being able to share them and get that peer validation? And that's the beginning of a narrative.
And is that something that's also kind of in grasp for you? At the moment, I understood both your companies working a little bit more on the B2B side, but also I imagine that kind of look at that design that you made in this fabric in this setting is something that also would help the marketability.
Yes, let me explain a short story. For approximately 2 years, we had a meeting with Amazon in the United States, and they came to us and said, do you think it is possible from the design, from the idea to mail, to do everything within 4 hours? And we said in the first time, no, it's not possible. Why are you thinking about it? And then they explained us that the story of Amazon was a similar one. Also, they are very famous on book selling. And what they have done was they developed a technology that each book in the world can be reprinted within 48 hours. They said that was the base of Amazon, the heart of Amazon. And they said, let us do that and let us think about it. And then we talked with some companies and we built up in Florence, Alabama, we built up a small factory. And we showed that it is possible. When you go on the website from Amazon, you order, it was a clothes for a lady, and you can design it, and within 4 hours it was finally designed, finally produced, and it was in the box to ship. And this is working, but not really integrated in our world. But we think that it will go in this direction, and that will change the world and give us another impact to everything what we're doing today.
We actually saw that using the software to create those digital fashions is getting more and more simpler to use. So this is, I think, one of the main ones. When I started using the software in 2007, it was still really complicated to use, but we actually have now, my daughter created a really cute design yesterday. She's 4, and we have another friend who had a 7-year-old creating designs, and this will actually be something that is then at some point will be available to more people to actually create something, and I think bring value back to fashion at some point, because you could wear something that you would maybe not buy, but you can wear it digitally, and then you could maybe see, well, this actually really suits me, so I'll spend the money to buy something that has a lot of value for me, and that I will not trash next week, but I'll actually make a more refined decision on what I actually purchase, because I have something else where I can experience fashion and share it with my community to express myself. So I think this has a huge potential to disrupt.
It's great that you mentioned kids. Maybe you're familiar with the Zepeto app, I think it's called. Have you heard, you know that? Do you want to talk about it quickly?
Zepeto is an app where you can create a virtual avatar of yourself that kind of looks like you, and then you can just buy items, you can buy dance moves, you can buy poses. It's kind of like a gamified app for your virtual identity.
And it's really popular with kids, and the kind of idea, like in a different century, when some of us were young, you had like an Anzipüppchen, and you would cut out little pieces of paper and stick them on a little doll, you know? It's like the Stone Age version of what's happening on that app now, basically. I would love to talk to you all about consumption habits. So if this whole virtual world is now becoming possible, I mean, like, my imagination is kind of already running wild. We are living in the world of influencer marketing. I'm sure the sort of outlet for actual digital clothing is increasing because there's a whole bunch of people out there trying to earn their living with social media posts, so probably are interested in looking different and cool and new each time, but maybe don't even have the need to own those. Is that a main target market you're looking at?
I think that's the opportunity of the now, and Fortnite game is the best example because they make more than $300 million in sales each month, only from digital-only assets. And I read somewhere just recently that I think it was a crazy big number, like between 60 and 70% of those in-game purchases are for the actual look of the identity. It's not to make your character better at something, it's to make your character look cooler in one way or another. So that's your virtual identity. You're pimping your virtual identity. Now when those experiences become something outside of a game, when it actually becomes something that can be universally being plugged into games or social media or whatever other platforms exist, that's when we'll actually want to start buying items. Like, think of your LinkedIn profile. If it's a 3D avatar, what kind of items would you buy for that avatar? How would you pimp your Instagram profile if it was a 3D avatar?
Stacia, what kind of world is it going to be if my LinkedIn profile wears a super expensive, high fashion brand suit that I could never afford in real life? And my business interview, I don't know, I just make up an excuse why I'm not wearing it that day?
It's a good question. I'd never really considered. I guess the way I think about virtualization and consumption habits, my hope is that actually by being able to experience fashion virtually, what we choose to purchase in the physical world will change, and that we will value things in the physical world that are made with durability for the physical world, and then we can have, as you mentioned, this kind of experience, both of you did, of more playful fashion that is disposable but in a digital context.
So we've been talking a lot about consumer consciousness and consumer habits in the last 1.5 days, and I'm wondering if that can hold true, or if we would open the door not to the idea that, you know, if you can consume endlessly and frivolously in the digital, would that not also happen in the physical?
I'll give you an analogy, which gives you a minute to think. So I come from the world of online music. So I grew up through the whole digitization. We're living through the same thing. And if you think about it, people probably listen to more music in a disposable way because we have platforms like Spotify. However, I think people experience music in live contexts very different, and ticket prices have significantly increased over the years, which would... And people haven't stopped going to concerts, which would, I mean, you can extrapolate a little bit out and say maybe people will become willing to pay for better quality as it's available and can experience more disposable fashion in a digital context. I think that's the delta that if I had to find a pattern, that's the one I would point to.
Yeah, I actually agree. I think it's the biggest opportunity lies with the brands, because what we see now is, and actually visiting a lot of brands and talking to them about their 3D journey, oftentimes I would check the website before and then look at their ranges, and a lot of the ranges look very general. You can't really see that there is detail, things like this. But if you have, as a brand, if you have the opportunity to create a portion of your range in 3D and blast that out, and then create another portion of your range automated in 3D that just goes to production, you have so much more energy and actually headcounts and people available to create ranges and part of your ranges that are relevant, that have quality, that are actually thought through, and they can still be created in a shorter amount of time because your process is so much better. So I think it's a real opportunity for brands to engage in this digital fashion, and then some brands are already doing it, so it's actually nice to see on social media popping up if someone's wearing a fancy jacket from a luxury brand in 3D. So I think this is something that will happen.
Do you share this?
At the end of the day, the customer will have a physical product, I'm sure. So, but the way is different. I agree with you. And for example, there's a vision that you send your avatar to shopping. This avatar knows everything from you. You can say, okay, that's me. I look like I am, and then I send it, and he come back and say, I recommend a white shirt in this size from this company that fits perfectly to that what you need, what you have, and what you need. This is another experience, and I think the technology gives us the opportunity to do that, not the guarantee that we get it.
I'm going to take the sort of role, and I'm obviously just assuming here, again, from my panelists from the previous panel, and voice the reminder, though, that if we're consuming digital products, we're still consuming physical resources. It is not like there's no using earth resources in consuming physical products, let alone because I need energy to consume them. Is that something that you take into your equation?
Yeah, so we were just part of the Fashion for Good accelerator in Amsterdam, which is a sustainability startup accelerator. And we did some impact measurement with them of looking at what does it cost, how much CO2 does it cost to make a real t-shirt versus a digital t-shirt. And the digital t-shirt was 10 times less, meaning that we still have a carbon footprint. We still have to think about the energy that goes into our computers, into rendering, especially rendering is a very energy-consuming process, to all the way to the lights on our roof, to all the electricity in our studio. So it's really just being aware of that every single aspect of the carbon footprint that we have in that process. So, I mean, I would still say we are the most sustainable fashion brand in the world because we don't create physical clothing at all. But still, it still comes that next step, you know. So we have to look at the electricity because that is a big part of the conversation. Cybersecurity will be a massive thing for us as well. So we just have to look at it from a different perspective than the fashion industry.
I want to get a bit technical for a moment because I think it's great that you did that impact assessment, and it's great to hear that Fashion for Good really does a lot of great work in that area. I find, and please don't, I'm not trying to be super critical, but a 10th I find shockingly high. Was that just the production cost? It did not take into account the sort of cradle to cradle, what happens till the end of the lifespan of your product? Just the production side of things?
Just the production side,
okay,
yeah,
because then I imagine if you took the whole into the perspective, it would be much, much lower than a 10th. Because a tenth of one real t-shirt for a digital t-shirt seems like an incredibly high amount of resource still.
Yeah, honestly, I don't know too much about it because it's something that we're very well aware that we need to do our research in it. Now, for a small startup with basically core group of 3, to do that real impact measurement research is too resource heavy for us right now. So that's definitely something that we have to take into the future. It's
super interesting. That's maybe a question that would go on to all of you, research and development in this area. What are you all doing? I'm sure you're researching and developing your own products, and you probably are as well. But collaboration is, again, one of the overarching themes. Can you imagine also collaborating, especially when it comes to impact measurement, on the virtualization of fashion? Is there already something happening in that area?
I think we have to collaborate. I mean, we've all three of us have already had conversations. From my perspective, again, coming back to online music, what will really change the game is if we adopt some standards to move data around across platforms. I'm waiting for this. I think this is something that we need to work on, and standardization processes are slow, but the quicker we get there, the easier it will be for consumers to benefit from the data that comes from your software and from your software, and yeah, then that opens the potential to do things at scale.
The fashion industry isn't collaboration industry. So, but today we do this with airplane, with sending, or with mail, and inside the mailboxes we have all our samples. And this is a waste. This is a waste of time and resources. And when we move this phase more to a virtual side, we can help the world and we can help the industry.
What kind of, do you already have impact measurement in place? Is that something that you do from an ecological point of view?
Yeah, what we see at our customers when they're using 3D software only for the process of sampling, that we have a decrease of sampling parts approximately 50%, 40 to 50%. We have customers, they produce 10% of their whole, or 10% of their whole amount of products are sampling products. So we are talking about of millions and billions of pieces we are able to save. And I think this is an issue we can go forward.
Absolutely.
And then the next step from that would be if we're actually going into this shorter creation process, that then we can really also cut out all these pieces that are never sold. So there is a huge amount of garments which are made and put into store and then dumped, so we can get rid of this, or we can also get rid of the samples that are made, put in showrooms and then never bought. This can all be cut out way before anything get actually put and cut out. So this is definitely something. And then the other one would actually come into local production. So we can try and do that because we have much smarter processes. We actually know what we're selling. There are companies who've tried that to actually sell before making. This is another one that we talk about a lot. You can actually put a digital fabric online and say, you can get this within a few days, we'll make it for you.
Fashion on demand, to go back to the Amazon example from earlier. I do fear, though, that there is a little bit of a discrepancy the conversation lines that we're having, in the sense that on the one hand we're inviting to consume more digitally and be free with this consumption, even though we know that also has a real carbon footprint. We are trying to make things faster. But the main call from the sort of activist perspective was to do less and to produce less, to buy less, and to be slower. So is there a gap here in the conversation, or where do you think this fits together?
It fits together in the case that the question is, are the products we produce the right one? The waste we have is we don't know what our customers want to have in 12 months. This is our problem. So we produce too much and we lose 30%, 40% of all pieces because we have it produced and then we send it to Africa, wherever. We cannot sell it. If we are faster, if we are more on demand, we can produce really the things the customer needs. And this is the goal we have.
The other aspect would be to, if we're talking about consuming more conscious, it's probably also something about that the customers actually know what we're doing. Because at the moment it's like people buy and they don't know where it comes from, and they don't know, it's a lot of people who are not really educated. So I think that digital fashion is a great way to engage our customers to, this is what we're doing, and maybe at some point give them the opportunity, you can create your own. And then what we talked about, if we have those factories, you can make your own t-shirt, or you can put your own print on, to actually more and more get this to actually involve the customer. So I think this is a great way of starting to do that and to educate our customer, because at the moment, if we'll put 100% fair trade cotton into a t-shirt that our customers don't want, it will end up in a landfill. So we're still not doing the right thing. So.
Right, but we seem to be stuck a little bit in a chicken and egg situation between the fast fashion that customers are demanding and the fast fashion that the industry is providing.
But it's not fast. It's nothing. It's not fast. We call it closer to market. So we actually know what the customer wants, because fast fashion would actually be, it can still be 12 months beforehand. So I can still 12 months before they actually hit the market, I can say, I want this and this and this, but then every week, it's just every week, but I still breathe it in. I still tell the factory 12 months ahead, or my designer. This will actually bring it closer to the market. So I actually sit down 10 days or 15 weeks before and say, is this something that actually anyone wants, or should we just bin it because no one will buy this?
I mean, I fully get your question. I grew up in Finland in the middle of a forest with very slow living. And I basically question myself every single day, how are we actually not taking away value with what we're doing? And I think the conversation, because what you're challenging right now is basically you're challenging the business models that exist. And the fast fashion basically came through the consumer need and fashion brands recognizing what the consumer need was. They knew what the opportunity was. They created faster fashion. They made everything cheaper, faster, and maybe not more quality, but they were able to get it to there very quick. Now that's an experience that they created looking at the customer need. Now the question for us is like, what is the experience that we can create in the digital space that will actually provide more value in, let's say, this retail e-commerce experience? So you don't want to buy more, you don't want to do more. And honestly, when I talk to business people, we never have this discussion. Then it's like, how can we sell more? How can we make more revenue, profit, this type of stuff. When I talk to artists, that's when the conversation comes. What is that experience? How do we connect ourselves back to nature? And not that we become even more on our mobile phones, because everybody's so critical of ourselves, of being constantly on the mobile phone. I notice it with myself too, but it's about taking ownership of our digital lives. Not having our digital lives take ownership of our physical lives, but our physical lives taking ownership of our digital lives, and us actually wanting to create that space to, let's say, slow living, what you mentioned, Because just like yesterday, a digital fashion friend of mine just said like, oh, I just stopped Instagram because I noticed how consuming it was. You hear that all the time. Everybody's so focused on the likes on the Instagram. Of course, from a business perspective, me too. I love it when I see I have 100 new followers all of a sudden. But at the same time, I don't let it consume me. I really just try to think for myself of like, what is it that I want out of this space that we're creating, which is the digital fashion space. I want it to be something that is valuable. I don't know if it's called slow living, but it's definitely going in that direction. Consuming less, but having an experience that I want to be part of that experience.
The only thing I would add, because I think everything that's been said is right on, in a e-commerce experience, you should be able to learn how long an item is going to last. And I think a platform like ours, we have the data. We can start to help customers navigate when they want to consume. Oh, am I going to choose the t-shirt that falls apart after 4 weeks, or I'm going to choose the one that I'm going to be wearing for the next 2 years? And I think that kind of information has never really been available in a standard way. As a consumer, you know brands are kind of a proxy, but even still, to be able to learn and introduce in a digital context, hey, this is what it looks like, and by the way, this is what you can expect, and this is the kind of care that a garment is going to require. I think it's much like food. We have to go through an education process, and I think we're in the middle of that right now.
The similar analogy is made in a previous panel where it was said that we need the same kind of consumer information when we're buying food, as in the sourcing, fair trade, etc., but also additives. And the same kind of intuitiveness also when we're buying a fridge and we see the level of energy consumption somehow when we buy our clothes in future. I'd like to open it up for questions and comments before we go into some closing thoughts on the panel. So if you would like to address a question or if you have something to share, please give me a sign of hand. Okay, well, I'll leave it open so you can raise your hands from now on in case you'd like to ask a question or give a comment to the panel. I'd like to just move away very briefly from virtualization to other digitization aspects before we go back there in a closing round. Transparency and traceability was a reoccurring topic, and how to use the blockchain to make that more effective. Is that something that you're working on to integrate solutions as well? Maybe that's first to you, the question.
So in my area, we haven't started working with blockchain. I think what we've thought about is the way the automotive industry has used blockchain to basically communicate parts specs, and if that isn't how we should be thinking about fashion. And I don't know if that's the right or wrong answer, but I think it's a really provocative one that would benefit both consumers, but as the whole manufacturing chain.
And I'm just doing an emerging technologies loop here, basically. I was expecting a couple of years ago that by now there would be a whole bunch of corners here where people would have VR glasses and these tactical gloves to take part in a virtual, some kind of fashion surrounding showroom, fashion show. But we're seeing a lot less of that than we maybe thought 5 years ago. Which other direction is heading it in, or why are we not seeing that?
Yeah, there are some developments ongoing, for example, but we are very looking on, let me say, technologies which are helps really, so which you are able to integrate in your industrial process. For example, what we do is that the software is running on big tablets, which are 4 meter to 3 meters to square meters or 10 square meters. So then there can work 10 or 12 designers parallel on it, and you can share the data with your agent in Hong Kong in real time and so on. This is a very important thing. Or another one is to integrate the tablet systems or the handy systems to use VR and AR technologies. So they go to the showroom and you look through your tablet and you see then the different pieces on a virtual in your real room. So this helps, but all other technologies are not so accepted actually in the market.
This is something that you talked about earlier, acceptance of companies, and that there's actually still quite a bit of sort of lobby work to do amongst your clients.
Yeah, so one hand is definitely the brands themselves, who are not really sure what they're doing, how they want to do it, and how it's all going to happen. And I think the other one is actually our viewing habits, and that's actually one thing that I've been working with the last 12 years to get people to actually, it's okay to see a garment on an avatar. it will come out as a real garment, it's fine. So it's still our viewing habits, and this is just how it is. We're used to seeing garments on people, and we're not used to seeing garments on avatars. So there is, and the whole gloves and VR mixing, I think there will be other technology who will be much more beneficial, because we have lots of technology where you can see a 3D garment rotating in a room. You actually can have something where you have your phone and you see yourself in your space wearing digital. So this is something that's more speaking or connecting more to what we're used to, and then maybe slowly bringing us into something else, and then looking into this. We also talked about actually designing in 3D, because this is the other thing. Designers are used to designing in 2D. They don't design in 3D. They should actually be going around a garment and designing in 3D.
Do you look at other industries and trends happening there, like in product design? And like, I'm just asking because I come a little bit from this whole maker movement, sort of prototyping world, and the idea of 3D design, and especially the interplay between the physical and the virtual, has kind of really taken hold there. So is there a little bit of other connection points? Or are you trying to make these connection points?
Yeah, we actually, so our software is completely open. So we have an open software where anyone can write a plugin to actually come into our software. So we could basically work with anyone to create something that then comes into our software. So we could generally do that, and we have a lot of connection points from other industries then.
Yeah, so in our market, it's more on the process side, so that we are looking where similar process, for example, in the automotive industry, what can we learn from that? And there was the same issue that, for example, the designer are much more slower in using 3D tools than the engineers. So there was a similar problem we have actually in the fashion industry. The pattern maker, everyone, no problem to work with the 3D tools, but the designer, they are looking for very simple solutions. And so we have to bring both together, and there are some good ideas coming from the automotive industry, and I hope we can integrate and realize that and convince the designer to work with that, because this is very important to create the speed.
I am going to leave you for just a sec because the arm went up, and I'm going to go to collect that question. So be right back with you, of course. If you want to come toward me a little bit, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Livia. About what we're talking, so we have an avatar and we can try our clothes online, and this is super cool. We don't have to send a parcel. I feel that this solves many problems, but there's this touch, this feeling of clothing that we have when we try on that you can't. I wonder if there's anything that any of you are working on towards this, or how do you see this problem being solved for the customer?
Thank you. Tactile. Thanks very much.
That's the number one objection we get every single day, is really the tactility. I can't touch the clothing. But if I show you a picture of leather, you know how it feels like. If I show you a picture of cotton, you know how it feels like. So our eye is very well educated to understand the tactility of clothing. And on top of that, we actually want to design materials that do not exist in real life. So just to add to that mix, so you get a little bit of a sensation, a feeling from it. I mean, I don't believe that we'll always have that need to want to touch clothing. I also enjoy it, but I don't think it's going to be a make it or break it deal when I'm buying a garment. I mean, I buy 80% of my clothing on e-commerce channels. I mean, do you touch it? Do you feel it? Do you smell it? No, it's a flat picture, and that picture right now is good enough for me to be able to make my purchasing decision.
We can generate heat maps today that show you, for denim, for example, where the denim is going to fit a certain avatar, tight or loose. And it was really interesting. We did a test with some customers that came into our office, and we had them look at the heat map and then actually try the jeans on that they were looking at. And they were really struck by how much what they saw translated into the feeling on their body. So I think from a sense perception perspective, it's going to be interesting days. I still like the idea though of sharing the actual feel of fabrics, because I think that would also offer customers an opportunity to try things that maybe they weren't familiar with, and I'm not sure how we solve that with haptics or something where there's some kind of physical sensation, because if you've never touched leather before, it has a very different feeling. I mean, that's kind of a silly use case, but you get my point, right?
I mean, this is just anecdotal, but I'm totally one of those people that if I order something online, the reason for me to send it back is often not fit, but it's definitely that I'm disappointed either by the quality of the fabric and the way it feels or the color, which is also something that's quite simple, really, to give the CMKY value of a color for me to check it back to see if it's what I'm actually seeing on the screen, but it's something that I've hardly ever found as something to be offered. So sometimes maybe it's not even this big technological leap, but just a simple tweak to kind of get better usability. But I was hoping that somebody was going to come with like nanotechnology sensors are going to be enabling us to feel all kinds of materials and these gloves that I'm creating, but I'm guessing that's not really happening right now, no? Okay, well, maybe in some R&D labs somewhere out there.
Well, we're talking to a startup in Delft who have done an exoskeleton for your arm, which is basically so you could pick this up and it kind of holds you so you can't like fully close your hand. And the next phase that they're doing, they're creating tiny little motors in a glove to actually give you that tangibility, that haptic effect. Maybe that will come in the future, maybe not. Like, I also don't like VR or AR, but I believe that sometime in the future it will actually be super amazing.
I do actually think that there's a lot of things being developed in the health sector that might be quite interesting for this in future. There are also gloves to aid people who cannot speak or read with motion sensors to be able to communicate with them, and other sort of a lot of medical glove ideas out there. And I'm wondering somewhere between the prosthesis and those gloves and other devices, there's probably going to be some cool innovation in there that's going to spur over to the fashion industry. Let's have one more look at the topic of how do you see, maybe we've covered quite a bit of ground here. Are there other ways that you think virtualization can help reduce the carbon footprint or improve sustainability in the fashion industry that we haven't yet covered?
I think a lot of practical examples. I think we didn't really go too deep into, let's say, sampling, what goes into that whole sampling process of a garment going back and forth between Europe and Asia. I think that's one massive thing that digitization is going to solve. I'll give a user case from us working together with Tommy Hilfiger. It's basically the Tommy Hilfiger wants to be fully digital by 2021, up until to the selling point. So what they've done now, they've completely digitized the design process, so you don't necessarily need to be a 3D designer to be able to make garments, you know. So they've digitized all of their blocks, they've digitized all of their details, all of the materials. So you can basically say, I want that block, that detail, that material, and there you can make a digital foam board. Okay, this is going to be my collection for the next season, and then they can take those renderings into their sell-in process, to their go-to-market meetings, all the way up to consumer-facing material that can live on all of their channels, social media, in-store, online. That can all be 3D, which is basically is this production on demand model. And I think that's going to be, let's say, the biggest immediate solution that we have right now.
Yeah, I agree with test samples. Absolutely, I think is you can save 30 to 50%. That's one side. The other one is in front of the 3D process. To integrate fabrics, to integrate accessories like buttons or a zipper inside the 3D technology helps to create sustainability, because it's not necessary to make this thousands of kilometers of fabrics only for testing, only for the development and departments to create. So this is another issue, and so on this stage we think it's really a great chance to save.
The other one is single source of truth. So we're actually talking a lot that, I mean, now what we do is a designer creates something and then they email it somewhere, and then it's a tech pack is created and it's emailed to the vendor, and then it comes back. So we do this a lot of sending also emails and data across the world. So with this digital, we actually have one file that has all the information. So it has the trims, it has my materials, and it has the pattern, and it's one that can be somewhere and everyone has access. So we can lose a lot of this work that we're doing of even sending emails around.
And I think giving, just to round it out, giving consumers a really effective and efficient way to communicate their actual body shape and their preferences using digital technology. it's the missing link. I mean, we can go out and scan people, and that's kind of how it works, but to be able to actually connect an individual customer and their body measurements with their entire purchase history and what they're looking for, I think is the last piece.
Yeah, and again, how cool would it be if that was all my data that I got to own and see my own personal fashion history evolve over the decades and the personality that I have and have shaped with that. I thought this was incredibly exciting, and I would love to continue this discussion to see, what are the next steps, where are we going to be in a couple of years with this, and how virtual are all our closets going to be by then. I have a little bit of advertising that I'd like to build in at the end of the session, because this panel is hosted in collaboration with Republica. And Neoneat is going to be hosting several sessions at this year's upcoming Republica. I get to say we, because I'm also part of the Republica curation team and moderation team, so we're really happy and excited about this partnership. And Republica, maybe let's have a little bit of audience participation. Who has been? Yay, some people, but not many of you. So in case you're interested in joining, it's going to happen from 6th to the 8th of May. Here in Berlin, Republica takes place at Station, Gleis Dreieck. We also stream the content from our first 2 stages live in case you're not physically able to attend, and we publish all our video content online. So in case you cannot come and be part of the party and the show, then of course you can find the Neoneat Republica sessions online, and I look forward to seeing, though, hopefully many of you there, not just virtually, but physically. See what I did there? So with that, this is the last Neoneat Fashion Sustain session that I got to host. So a really big thank you to the whole team, to all the fantastic and exciting panelists I got to interview, and to all of you. We're going to continue on stage, though, and I'm going to pass over into the very able hands of other Neoneat team members for the next sessions. And I hope to see you back at the next Neoneat myself. So thanks very much.